Welcome to the Blackout Show, presented by The Guillen Grid, a show about the Chicago White Sox baseball, the good, the bad, the ugly. We'll debate what's working and what's not on the south side of Chicago. It's old school versus new school baseball. And most importantly, we're keeping all the receipts.
It is February 23rd, and the White Sox are already 0-2. Welcome to another edition of the Blackout Show podcast. I'm Slavko Bekovic, joined by Ozzy Jr., Jay, and Gonzo for another episode. Thanks to everybody for tuning in, listening, downloading, and streaming with us. We've got the full squad in Arizona. The White Sox played a baseball game today. That's the good news. The bad news is the White Sox played a baseball game today. So usually that results in a bad thing. Jay, why do you look shocked?
Because we do this every time. Like, I get so geeked up throughout the week. We're going to record. We're going to, talk about the Sox. And then Slavko just bees a Slavko.
We got to tell it like it is. First, before we even dive into all kinds of new stuff that we're getting into tonight, Ozzy Jr., man, how are you?
I'm doing well.
How was
the White Sox played 0-2. I didn't know that they counted spring training games, wins and losses.
They do. They keep record, but it was more so just so I can rub it into Jay that the White Sox are going to lose a lot.
I'm kind of concerned for Jay. Like, I think if you're expecting the White Sox to win, you're a bit delusional.
I'm taking the over. I'm literally
taking the over's 49.
Over 30 games, you can take the over.
Yeah,
no, it's 49.
49. Of course, you're going to take the over, but again, I think everyone is looking into so much of everything they do, and we're going to cover so many topics today on that matter. But everything the White Sox do now, it's like it's news. Everything they sign somebody, they don't sign somebody, a rumor, everything's like do or die. I feel like for the fan base and everybody. And by the way, they got to be. You're in the long haul for this. You're in high school. You just entered your freshman year, and you got 4 more years, even with all your AP classes that you're taking before graduation.
Oh boy!
So it's
going to be one of them today.
Oh, it's not going to be one of them. I'm just being.
Bro.
Being
I know what it is. I know what it is, bro. You don't have to tell me. I know what's going to happen today.
But everything's going well. Back from Venezuela, did not win the championship this year round, so did not go back to back. But everything else is good.
All right, so we'll get into the big news that everybody's been up in arms about the last couple of days. Reportedly, Justin Ishbia was interested in purchasing the majority rights and becoming the owner of the Minnesota Twins. Our old buddy Dan Hayes, who used to be a colleague of mine at NBC Sports Chicago, he used to be a White Sox insider, reported that Ishbia backed out of his interest with the Twins in order to buy more minority shares in his ownership stake with the Chicago White Sox. There's been some advanced reporting and some rumors that Ishbia basically making himself kind of the successor to Jerry Reinsdorf as chairman. We don't still know, at least not publicly, how much Jerry Reinsdorf owns in the White Sox right now. The rumor that, or the number that a lot of people throw around, and I believe John Greenberg reported this in The Athletic, is 19%. I don't know that is factual anymore. We know that there's been a lot of wheelings and dealings behind the scenes with Jerry over the last couple of years. So the current kind of plan is seemingly that Justin Ishbia is going to take over eventually as the majority owner and be the primary stake holder with the Chicago White Sox. So obviously a lot of excitement in that regard. His brother Matt is the majority owner of the Phoenix Suns. The Ishbias are, I believe they're originally from Michigan. I know Matt Ishbia went to Michigan State. I don't know a ton about Justin's background. I know a lot more about Matt. But if this is the plan that Jerry is setting up to kind of have his successor, seemingly the reaction so far from the White Sox fans has been positive. Matt Ishbia, as an owner with the Suns, is very aggressive. They went out and made a aggressive trade for Kevin Durant a couple of years ago, which people like to see. They're obviously spending a ton of money with Devin Booker and other players like that. So it's a positive, I think. I think if someone said that the dog that's on the corner as a stray was going to be the next owner of the White Sox, most White Sox fans would be pumped because it's not Jerry Reinsdorf. So, I mean, it's seemingly trending that way, that Justin Ishbia is kind of making his path to be the next owner of the White Sox. So I'll ask you guys, what are your thoughts?
Who's going to go first? How many rings do they have in the Phoenix Suns? Have they won an NBA champ? I don't follow the NBA that much.
I don't think they've ever won an NBA title.
Oh, okay.
Matt Ishbia has only been the majority owner for a few years.
Okay. So they have no rings, right?
Correct.
Okay. So yeah. So getting an owner that's a billionaire does not mean that you're guaranteed a ring, White Sox fans. So that's and most people that buy professional baseball teams at this level of Major League Baseball are usually billionaires. You know, no one's buying the team that doesn't have the money to buy it. You know, I think it's interesting that everyone acts shocked. I think that knowing Jerry, the way that Jerry does business, in the sense that he always likes to have a connection, it always seems to be that way. So I think that the sale of the team will eventually be more of a transfer. It will probably be from somebody that's already got a relationship with Jerry, is a part of the ownership. I find it interesting that now White Sox fans are interested in how much shares Jerry owns or doesn't own, but they didn't before. The part where people need to realize is the word chairman. Okay, the HBS can own 95% of the Chicago White Sox. They can own 100% of the White Sox. If Jerry's the chairman, he's the chairman, and he'll be the decision maker on how this team moves forward. And from a business standpoint, again, I think that there's a lot of things that need to be in place. The collective bargaining agreement probably has to do something with it. But I've heard a lot of positive things. I know people who are close to that know the brothers well. Only have heard really, really positive things from a business standpoint. Obviously, they're successful and their bank account says so. But from a personality standpoint, and it's exciting, man. It's exciting because two guys that are involved in professional sports that seem to like to compete. And it's a conversation that that obviously you don't want to have, because obviously it means that Jerry's no longer around. But a transition needs to be in place. And we know that the family kind of has a more focus on the Chicago Bulls and not the Chicago White Sox. But I don't think that this changes the plan moving forward on what they're trying to do and build. But it does give you a transition plan, and maybe Jerry stays as a chairman until his health allows him to. And maybe they've talked about that, kind of like, okay, I'll step down, and kind of like a handoff. But it's the reaction is just crazy. People think that they're going to come in, and I thought when they announced it that they were going to sign the next Ohtani, and then Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and then Skeens was going to come to the White Sox. The way that everyone was acting.
That's next year. Next year.
Yeah. So you know what? The one thing that I like about this, Slav, and it's the only thing that had me worried, was the White Sox moving away from Chicago. Okay. Just because I'm selfish, I want my kids to grow up in the city where their grandfather did so many great things. Going to the stadium is a part of just my life as an adult and as a kid. And no matter how bad the team is or how good the team is, we're very fortunate to have two professional sports baseball teams in town with a lot of history. And again, we have every major sport in the city of Chicago. So that's exciting. And it's also exciting because this disaster with TV and revenue and the money's not coming in and everyone's saying that baseball, is not what it used to be, and ESPN pulling out and all these things that are like in the business world, like where the economy is of the country. To see somebody that's interested with that deep of pockets, to go in and buy more shares and kind of eventually kind of set themselves up, at least rumor wise, that they're going to be taking over. That's exciting. So I take it like that. I thought it was great news. I thought it was great news. It was great news from the standpoint that, that they're making moves in the background, and They can afford to build their own stadium probably or do whatever they want to do. But what I like is that from what everyone's told me is they love the White Sox. They want to keep buying shares. It's worked out great with Jerry, and that the team is in Chicago. That I like. And again, from a room, you don't have to be a genius to. Why would you not take a team from an ownership standpoint to buy more shares if your end goal is to be an owner? It seems like the White Sox are looking like the team that they will be taking over in the future.
Initially, I thought I was actually terrified because I was thinking, like, due to his background, like he owns 22% of United Wholesale Mortgage. He has a background in like real estate and stuff. I'm pretty sure that the idea of moving the Sox came up when he sat at the table, and me being as selfish as Ozzie Jr., like that would be devastating to me as a baseball fan, moving my White Sox away. Now, I will follow the Sox, but if you move cities, you run the risk of losing your name too. Like we see time and time again, like the entire identity of a franchise gets wiped away with changes of ownership, with moves of scenery. So to a point, though, I am excited because it is a breath of fresh air. Like you don't know what it's like having to go and argue with fans about how much money I spent at Jerry World when they don't think he deserves it. So hopefully this could be somebody else who may or may not deserve my money that I'm going to blindly spend.
Hey, thank you. Because of you, they were able to sign Joey Gallo to a minor league deal.
Let's go!
We appreciate your investments. Gonzo, what do you think about Ishbia, or at least the potential of Justin Ishbia?
So I think the original part of it, with him turning down the ownership for the Twins for minority rights for the Sox, I don't think that was plausible. But like to the side of it with what OJ was saying with moving, I also on that same thought don't think he would turn down the Twins if you're moving this team out of the city of Chicago. I feel like he would take ownership of the city of the White Sox because it's in this market. So I just don't see him, even moving it out of here. But at the same time, I'm happy that we got a guy. I just want some fresh air on the product on the field, and I feel like someone, owner like him, taking us over is going to go that direction of being hungrier to put a better product on the field.
Did he facilitate Durant going the Suns? Was he?
They were involved in that. I think so. Justin is, I think, officially titled the governor of the Suns. I don't necessarily know what that means. Matt is the primary owner. His brother. That was in December of 2022 when that deal went through, and it was approved in February of 2023. And I believe the Durant trade happened in the fall or winter of 23 during the season. So. They were vital in that, and they're known for their aggressiveness. At least Matt is. Justin, assumingly behind the scenes, involved in that stuff too with the Suns. So I think that's a positive sign. To your point, Gonzo, I think you would think that Jerry at least has some sort of relationship with Justin to this point, being that he is a minority stakeholder in the White Sox already. I don't necessarily know that Jerry has to have any assurances per se if they have come to some sort of agreement that he's ultimately going to take over the franchise long term. Like Jerry can say, hey, yeah, we'll sell to you, but you have to keep it here in Chicago. I mean, Justin can say, yeah, sure, done deal. And as soon as Jerry dies or as soon as the deal gets finalized, he can say, no, we're going to Nashville, screw you. It doesn't really matter unless it's obviously contractually, as part of the transition between Jerry and Ishbia. I think to your point, Gonzo, like the White Sox are, I've seen this thrown around, and I don't know if I necessarily agree with the exact term, but it's a sleeping giant. You're in one of the top 5 media markets in the country. You have great competition, but you already have a lot of things going well for you. The problem is the network that they're on right now, nobody can watch. The product on the field right now is damn near unwatchable as it is. So those are two things, not necessarily in their favor, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Justin Ishbia cares about that right now. What he's taking over potentially is not what's happening, obviously, today. But you've got to think stadium deal. Something's got to be set in stone before Jerry officially finds his successor or sells or whatever that transition, period is, something's got to be situated with the stadium, and then obviously some sort of majority rights and then title. Like you said, Junior, you can own 99%, but whoever's the chairman is ultimately the one that's going to be making the decision. So you would think that in this scenario that Justin would be that guy.
And I like Slav. What I like also is because everyone thinks that an owner comes in and they just took over a 7-Eleven, and it's you just take over and you can just make changes overnight, and now you have a winner. Okay, that's not that easy, especially in today's market and the acquisition of players. So I think that if they are going to be the future, by them being involved, maybe a little bit more in the background, kind of like getting to know, Chris Getz, and getting to know the front office. And when I talk about front office, I talk about marketing, PR, everything. And they can see, and maybe they have input into Jerry. And again, being majority owners, if the opportunity comes for the right signing, and Jerry says, I don't have the money, and they say, you know what, just make it happen. Again, there's people at the table that have the money and seem to have the drive. I think it's great. I love when teams are owned by a family or by somebody that has a face. I don't like when teams are bought by hedge funds or someone that doesn't have a face, because that's just a business decision, and it's run like corporate America. I like when there's an owner, because there's a sense of competition. There's a sense of a pride in it. So I really believe that if it's going to be these guys, in this family, I like that, because they're saying that the team might sell for $2 billion or more. So, how many people really have that money that really want to be in sports and really love baseball in the city of Chicago? They could, basically go buy anything they want in the world. That's when you see hedge funds taking over teams and whatnot, because it is a good business. It's a good strategy. So I think that, again, something's in place at least, because if nothing was in place, and again, every time at Jerry's age, and anybody pretty much, anything can happen tomorrow. If nothing's in place, then you're running into chaos. Who takes over the team, selling? We've heard stories about teams in the battle of divorces and people fighting for teams, and teams not being able to take action or move a business forward because something's not in place, and a team's being battled in the courts. I think this just gives you it's a positive note. It's a positive note, and it's a cool name. Okay, there's a lot of billionaires out there that could have gone the wrong way, and I think this is a sexy name. It is. They own a sexy franchise,
and they're young.
And they're young,
under
correct.
50.
Correct. And again, what I liked was what I heard from them off the field, like off their business, of like the type of people that they are. I don't know them personally, never met them, but know people that have, and I've heard positive things from them as guys and human beings, and there is a connection to Jerry. So I think that's key, because Jerry's just not going to sell this team to whoever. Jerry, I don't care what people say, that he only cares about the money, that Jerry's just not selling just to anybody that comes in. Just like when this team was sold to Jerry, it was a decision that there's people always say Jerry wasn't the guy that had the most money on the table, but it was a decision that was sold to Jerry and that group for a specific reason. And this group has a connection to that family. Again, the board and the way the White Sox works. So a lot of things are positive. And again, it's a good story. Kind of like everything that the White Sox are doing now. Everything seems new. Everything seems to be, let's do everything different than what we were doing before.
Just modernize.
Yeah, correct. And again, those guys are going to bring, even if they're not calling the shots, if you have more money involved in a business, you might want to have more input on the way things are going. Maybe that was something that they said, well, if you want to have an opinion on these matters, you might have to spend a little bit more money with us. And maybe that's why they came in and said, you know what, here's our money. We want to have more input, because again, baseball is about the product on the field, but it's also about, the entertainment and ways to get better. And this situation with the TV deal, which is not only the White Sox, it's just Major League Baseball in general. This is a fresh eyes on it, and kind of, when you have that much money, you might have leverage and pull and make things happen. So it's great for not only the Chicago White Sox, but also for baseball. It's a young owner, young guys. And when people are saying that baseball is dead, there's only so many teams that you can buy. So that's exciting for the game and for the city of Chicago.
Yeah, you see the ESPN news the other day with them and Major League Baseball agreeing to mutually part ways with their agreement after this 2025 season. And baseball's in a weird spot right now because you have the NFL is obviously king. NBA is I don't want to say a close second. It's a distant second just because the NFL is head and shoulders above everybody else. But the NBA has a lot of interest. They have a lot of platforms. They're more global. At least as far as marketing and popularity. Major League Baseball right now is in a weird spot. The number one player, the most marketable player, is shrouded in this gambling scandal with his translator, with Shohei Ohtani. You have this section of Major League Baseball fans who are anti-Dodgers just because of the aggressive money that they have spent over the last few years and won a championship. And then you have just in general a commissioner who seems to be trying to figure it out kind of on the fly. Rule changes and all sorts of things that are being proposed left and right that I think your typical baseball fan's probably not really a big fan of. And it's still obviously very premature. The NHL, what they just did with that Four Nations and the amount of publicity and viewership they got could be a big thing for that league too. And that's certainly something the NHL needs, but Major League Baseball is in a tough spot. And if you're in Jerry Reinsdorf and the White Sox, you're even a tougher spot. You're the worst team in the league, coming off a historically bad year. Nobody can watch your product. You've got to figure out a way to make some positive changes and quickly.
It was even though, like, not too long ago, though, we just had the World Baseball Classic for baseball, thinking that things were going to go more uphill. But to the same stride of thought, though, Slavko, and I'll ask this to not only you, but the others as well, but is it fair to say, though, that the time frame of this could be Jerry's doing this for this season and next season, and then after the 26th season, he turns it over to Ishbia with the CBA coming up there? I just feel like he wouldn't want to be the one, like, just get the deal, get the money, and then have him worry about, coming out of the CBA.
No, I think that Jerry's not stepping away from the CBA. Just I think that from his experience, the power that he has with other owners, the way that those things are handled, I think that it might be a joint effort. Even if he's not the forefront, I think that he will be used as leverage from his experience. Again, it's all the owners with the players.
Things that he say mean something in that room.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Other owners.
Yeah. And I think that's the part of, like, the when you're an owner, it's such a small group, and again, it's you're coming in and you're trying to improve the league, and again, doesn't mean that Jerry agrees to everything the commissioner's saying. This commissioner and Jerry have not been on the same side of the table for a long time. If this was Bud Selig, I would disagree with that, because obviously we all know about the relationship and the friendship. I was introduced to Bud Selig by Jerry Reinsdorf. Bud, this is Ozzie Jr., Ozzie Jr., this is Bud Selig. So everybody knows that there's a relationship there. It's not hidden. So I think with this commissioner, people can't say, oh, well, Jerry's best friends with him. Jerry's the one that's making all these changes. So I think Jerry understands that the game is changing, but he also understands the fan, the real baseball fan, the fan that is gonna, like us, that are gonna watch no matter what. And again, baseball's got a lot of challenges, man. Where the game is growing are countries that are not, they're not rich countries. They're not countries that are. It's not Europe. Okay, you're growing in Latin America. You're growing in Mexico. So you have to be strategic where there's other sports that are growing in parts of the world where you're not growing. You're competing for an American market that you used to dominate, and now you're not. I think the ESPN situation for Major League Baseball is going to be great. ESPN did not like baseball. Okay, Major League Baseball said, why would we be covered by a channel that does not like us and does not give us coverage? And it was a mutual separation, because ESPN could have fought it. They said, we agree. We don't like you guys either. So it's going to be, it could be huge for baseball, because now you have all these streaming channels, and it could be a really big opportunity for owners and teams to be able to make a lot of money, because now you might be, you might be Apple, you might be Amazon, you might be a new streaming channel. So I think the ESPN situation was in a perfect timing for these owners to say, okay, wow, okay, we're out of this contract in 26. Let's figure it out. Because again, it wasn't like if ESPN was killing it, and we were talking 30 years ago, I would be like, wow, I'm very concerned. But Major League Baseball is trying to figure it out. Like everyone in Chicago is always very focused about Chicago, but this TV situation is happening across the board. Where you 35 years ago, college sports were not competing with professional sports. That's not true anymore. College teams are professional teams now. Gambling is in the mix now. That money's coming in with people leaving TV and cutting the cable. Yeah. So there's a lot of changes that are happening that none of these owners have ever experienced. So they're testing the waters too, and they're figuring it out. So that's probably one of the main top. Everyone's worried about how big second base is going to be, and if you can bat flip or stop drilling guys, and that's not going to change. Okay, you can make all the rules. Guys are going to fight. There's going to be bad human beings that put on baseball uniforms. Okay, there's going to be baseball players that are on both sides of the political spectrum, because human beings are human beings. But that being said, things like TV deals and blackouts and marketing and the way the game is promoted and marketed, that's a big deal. That's important for the league, and being able to maximize. Do I think Major League Baseball is in a better spot than it was 35 years ago? Absolutely. As Major League Baseball, I do from a standpoint. Yes, I do. I do from a standpoint of it's gotten better. I think the last 10 years they've actually gotten better than where they were. I think that the last 5
the product on the field or the
no marketing,
interesting
players. I think Ohtani is huge because at least are when I went to Taiwan, I didn't realize how big Ohtani was until I was in Taiwan. You go to Latin America, Dominican Republic has 100+ players. Venezuela, you're gonna follow guys because your country. And I was obviously Taiwan is not Japan, but every jersey in all the stadiums that we went to, they were packed. Everything that was baseball was all Ohtani, literally carrying it by himself. Everybody else buying something extra was because Ohtani jersey and some random team hat. It was Ohtani. So I think that part of the game is huge. So I think that baseball is actually in a better situation than we all think that they were. I think that if you would have asked me this 7 years ago, I would have been like, man, baseball's in a really tough spot. Best player plays in one of the worst markets in the game. It's not getting international, but I think that right now it's in the up. It's getting up. They're figuring out social media. I think that's the last sport to kind of figure it out from the other sports. They're doing a better job of marketing their players. They're doing a better job of growing the game in that sense. I think the problem, guys, is that especially with like here in Chicago, we're not going back to 1950s. Okay, it is going to be America's pastime, but every major sport has its chance, and football's king. They own a day of the week, they own a couple months of the year, and then basketball, the growth of it, just because of the game and the superstars that have been able to play in it, it's uncomparable. So, should they be concerned that they're dropping from 1 to 3? At the end of the day, someone's got to be 3. I think they're more concerned about staying relevant, just competing in today's world. My son, I don't know if he's going to like baseball. When I was his age, baseball was everything that, baseball was life. Sports was life. Now my kids are into a million things that are not baseball. They're watching a YouTube guy is more famous than, any sport. When I was in first grade, base sports was it. So, and I think that's just something that you're competing against worldwide. You're competing against attention, and I think that this is an opportunity for every team to kind of just jump on it and think outside the box. And I think that's probably one of the most important things in the collective bargaining is how do we keep players making money, but how do we grow professional sports teams and make the game more relevant to the people without having to change the essence of the game of baseball, not having to do something completely different.
So I just want to say my golden age of White Sox baseball was I could watch the White Sox on UPN, WGN, WCIU, and Comcast Sportsnet. There were 4 avenues for me to get my White Sox fix as a child. Now it's almost impossible for me to watch a White Sox game.
Is that nostalgia for you, or was it just because that's what you knew at that time? Because think about it today. We see this in college sports all the time. If you are a fan of the Illinois basketball team, They play 3 games a week. You have no freaking clue on any given day what channel they're on. Are they on CBS? Are they on Peacock? Are they on Big Ten Network? Are they on NBC Primetime? Is it on FS1? Is it on Fox? That's exhausting as a viewer. When you know I can flip to NBC Sports Chicago or CHSN or Marquee and watch my team 162 days out of the year, that is when it's truly ease of use, familiarity, that's brand recognition, that's growth for the viewer.
But
that's the ultimate positive. To
Jay,
me, and I agree with what you're
hold
saying,
on.
Jay, but that's nostalgia because that's not easy. And I remember as a
But
kid
hold
being
on.
frustrated
How can
myself.
How can you say it's not easy? Because 3 of the 4 channels that I named weren't on cable. So
Okay, CHSN right now is an antenna-free network.
Yeah, you can
I
watch
can't
it.
get it in my house.
Yeah,
I have an antenna. I can't get it in my house.
yeah. They got to
And
figure
you're
that
not on
out from a
Xfinity.
technology.
You're not on YouTube TV.
So
Right now, I
that's
cannot
my
watch the
point.
Chicago White Sox.
That's my point. It was easier for me to access the Chicago White Sox.
Well, I think Flopp's
it's
point.
tougher
No,
for
it's
me
tough.
to watch
Jay,
White Sox games.
Everybody on
right
this
now.
channel, is going to search and find the games. Okay. But for somebody that's going to be newer to the game,
Your
and that's
average
where a
Joe
lot of the
fan.
views comes, where they just turn the game on and say, oh, there's a baseball game on, and you watch it. That's the part where they're missing fans. Why?
Bingo.
English Premier League, okay, their growth compared to any other league in soccer in the world. Okay, soccer is the number 1 sport in the world. I don't care what anybody says. Okay, and the English Premier dominates. Again, there's the Champions League. Champions League is different. Top dogs play in that. That's 1 channel. Everybody watches that. There's only like 16 games. That's playoff. That's playoff for any sport. But the English Premier League has a set time where they show games in the United States. Same thing in Europe. These other European leagues, they went through the same thing they're going through the same thing right now that baseball is going through, where if I want to watch Real Madrid, I don't know what channel they're going to be on for the Spanish league. So whoever was a Real Madrid fan as a young kid, they're going to be a fan now of whatever Premier League team they can watch, because you're going to be watching on TV and, well, this team's on, I'm going to watch this team. So that's the part where they got to figure out. Again, the business seems to be changing a lot faster than sports teams are jumping on. And they need to figure that part out from an entertainment standpoint, because now also nobody's going to 5, 6, 7 games a week like they used to back in the day. Our lives are way too busy. So that part of life where you would go to more games, so TV is that much more important. So I think as a league, teams have to figure it out, and the leagues have to figure it out. I'm like, okay, how do I get more viewership? How do I get the common fan to be able to get in? Because again, it's not only about having a great product, but then is having access to that product to be able to get there.
That was going to be my request to new ownership. Like, make it easier for like the casual fan to watch the White Sox, because like we all know it's a bad product, but now the fact that it's impossible to even tune in, like, it's going to be very easy for
the Cubs. The Cubs are the perfect example of that. They had never won a championship, but they're on a channel.
People even forget, like the casuals, the people that just turn on the TV, right? Like back in the day, you could just turn on any other channels from 6 to 8 o'clock. You'll see the White Sox on from channel 26, channel 9, channel 50, whatever. Like, that's gone, on top of a team being unwatchable. People can forget about the White Sox, bro. And like, that's what I want ownership to understand. It's like, I need us to get back to having the White Sox. You could turn on the TV and have 3 different ways to watch it instead of just seeing.
Jay, but put it this way: when's the last time you watched Sunday Night Baseball?
I mean, I watch it every season, but not as much as I used to.
That's what I'm saying, though. So again, them going away from ESPN, like, you're trying to go to a place where you're going to have more viewers, like where you're going to say, oh, wow, there's a baseball game on.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, like
those networks are dormant. Why would I?
Those networks are dormant. They got to start thinking outside the box. They got to start thinking about maybe more. Amazon, what does my fan base
Apple
want?
TV?
Yeah, what does my fan base want? And again, in Chicago right now, today, the 3 teams that are in that channel, okay, they're figuring it out, and they're figuring it out because it's not only the White Sox that are in that challenge right now. There's other sports teams that are in that challenge right now in other leagues that are dominating, that are bigger than Major League Baseball. Okay,
the problem is they have 3 teams that are in the bottom 3 in
correct.
each of their leagues.
Correct.
And they have ownership that their entire fan bases are very frustrated with on all three of those teams. And you're asking people to pay $30 a month to stream one team, $40 a month to stream three teams that all suck. So at $30 a month, if the White Sox were a 100-win team and a World Series contender, you might get some people to sign up. But when they're a 120-loss team, and then the Blackhawks are fighting for the number one pick again, and the Bulls just traded away their best player and they're tanking, it's a bad time to start a network. And to your point, the reason that the Cubs became what they are and have what they are with Marquee is because of WGN America.
Mm-hmm.
People in the local market and across the country that had the channel could watch it for free. It was just on their TV, Channel 9. Oh, here we go. We'll watch the Cubs. That grew their market share, their brand, and eventually the popularity became the reason that they decided, you know what, screw all these other networks and all these other teams. We're just going to start Marquee.
It happened right now in the Caribbean series. The Dominican team has a channel on YouTube, and they had over 4 million viewers watching the game. And it was because of that access of everyone just went to YouTube to watch the finals. Because even if you weren't a fan of that team, oh my God, this team has a channel. They figured out, obviously, it's winter ball, it's a small market, but that's a lot of views, man. They would probably do their own sponsorship. So again, teams have to figure that out because for the first time ever, the market has changed and teams have been challenged where they're no longer just, these networks are no longer just giving you a huge paycheck like it was before. Before, all the teams were waiting for, we weren't waiting for new owners. And this is the part where I find it very ironic because especially Chicago White Sox fans and sports fans in the city of Chicago have a small memory. We were always waiting for, oh, when is the TV deal going to come? Because when that money gets injected, that's when they're going to go and spend money. Those days seem to have gone away, where these TV networks are no longer interested of writing these huge paychecks unless you're the NFL to have your rights. So I think right now it's even more important for teams and the leagues to worry about themselves internally and saying, okay, how can we fix this? Okay, how can we make this more profitable for us? Because we're no longer going to have this check just handed to us. So that just makes it even more intriguing because even how you build a team, okay? And this is the part, we're not the Pittsburgh Pirates where we've been struggling for the past 15 years, the Cincinnati Reds. Like there's other teams out there, man, that people think that, oh, they're doing great. Again, always the focus is on the Dodgers. The Dodgers are going through their moment. The Phillies, there's always a couple teams in the history of baseball that in any given moment, they spend a lot. The White Sox just spent money 2-3 years ago. I don't care what people say that they didn't spend money. Yeah, they didn't spend the most money, but they spend money. Was the money spent the right way? Absolutely not. Okay. Did they predict that they had Manny Machado in their farm system? Did they predict that they had, Bryce Harper in their farm system? They did, because that's obviously why they didn't sign those guys, because they said we have those guys internally. So that's a decision that you have to make as a team, and even with new ownership. And that's why I like that these guys are going to be around. Is you still have to evaluate talent, okay? You still have to develop talent, because there's very little teams that are built with 9 players in the starting lineup that are all big-time free agent signings. Okay, not everyone can be the Dodgers. That's just very hard to do, and you can see it across the league. So
and
if anybody
don't forget, when Steve Cohen bought the Mets and started going crazy, there was a lot of people in that room, a lot of other owners in Major League Baseball. They were like, "Yo, you need to chill the fuck out."
Well, that's the point. Yeah, it's flat. Because why? Because here's the thing. Okay, and I'm going to
make them look bad.
I'm going to make my personal take on this, because from the 90s, okay, back in the 90s, players were getting paid mostly for how many games you played. Iron Man was the standard. Okay, so Cal Ripken was here, let's say at $5 million, and then you had Ozzie Guillen, everybody else started coming in at $3 million, but the games played were very close. Okay. Frank Thomas, Ken Griffey Jr., everyone was, the value of the players was a lot closer. The issue with the game right now, and the reason why owners are saying don't go crazy, is because there's one Ohtani, okay? But then because Ohtani's position is in a certain position, the guy after Ohtani has to get paid close to Ohtani. But he's not even close to Ohtani. Okay, so then there's like 5 guys that are not Ohtani, but they're right in the mix. But then the gap between those guys and the other guys, it's huge. So teams are saying, wait a minute, if you go out and you spend this crazy money on a player that's value is not there, then I have to spend that crazy money. So it's a great time to be a baseball player. But if you really look at contract value to player, it's nuts. A fan got mad at me the other day because I said Andrew Vaughn has a lot of value to the White Sox. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I said, for the money that he is getting paid and the amount of games he's playing, it's a great contract. The reason that we didn't like the players that were here on the Sox before was because the amount of money they were getting paid did not match their production on the field because they weren't playing. So if you look at production to doing that, the problem is not Ohtani. The problem is not those top guys. The problem is that the talent of players has diminished, but they're getting paid a lot more money, and it's making it harder for teams when you're saying, man, I got to go out and spend $5-6 million for a backup player. That's why scouting and development is that more important. Okay. And you're trying to get players and say, okay, maybe we might have to change the game and say, let's try to compete and win when these guys are younger. So we're not paying these astronomical figures. Why? Because a utility player is going to cost you a couple million. Okay. And then you see guys like Alex Verdugo not get signed. He's still unemployed, guys. Alex Verdugo, unemployed, can't find a job. Why? Because his value in the market, he thinks, I got to be making so much money. And teams are saying, you know what, kid? We have a couple guys in our farm system that can probably do the same production that you do. And that's where the battle comes in. And when you have to see value to player, and whenever you see a crazy signing, you say, is this worth it? Not because of that player, it's because everyone that comes behind them to do that. And I think the White Sox, they gave it a shot. It didn't work out. You could say that during the Kenny Williams, Ozzie Guillen era, they tried to keep catching lightning in a bottle. They went away from that. They rebuilt. They had a run at it. It didn't work out. And now they're back at saying, okay, we have a new manager. We have a general manager that we believe in. We have people around them that are going to change the team. We have some talent. We drafted. We're signing people internationally. Let's see where we're going to be at in the next 2 years. In the next 2 years, if they think they're going to compete, they'll probably go out and sign a couple big players and do it again and try to spend the money wisely, hopefully. But the money was spent. They just didn't have the production that had to come from that. So that's a reality.
So let's get to the guys on the field. Colson Montgomery seems to be one of these young players that has a big opportunity right now. A lot of discussion about his potential ability to earn himself a starting role out of spring training and be on the opening day roster. He was the first player to hit a home run for the White Sox the other day. The best news to me was that was a lefty home run. That was Caleb Thielbar, who I believe was with the Twins for quite a few years. So that was promising to see straight away home run. Grant Taylor hit 101.2 today. That was something that perked a lot of people's interests around the prospect world. And I know, Gonzo, you've been on Grant Taylor since the White Sox drafted him. And then obviously Noah Schultz. Everybody's been hyping up Noah Schultz all spring. It's only been, 10 or 12 days since pitchers and catchers reported. But, I mean, this kid's got electric. So those are, I think, the 3 big names to this point. Obviously, the 3 arguably biggest prospects for the White Sox. Taylor not necessarily in that mix, but I think by the end of the season he could be. We haven't heard a ton, at least that I've seen in regards to the catchers. But I guess what are your guys' early impressions so far of what we've seen in the spring? Gonzo, I know these are a couple of your boys, so I'll let you start.
Yeah, I mean, and this is Grant Taylor coming off of injury, and he's averaging 99, topping off at 101. For spring training in Arizona, I wasn't expecting to see those tweets. I wasn't watching the game today, but I was following Twitter of not only the Sox, but all of baseball for fantasy purposes as well. But when I was seeing Scott Merkin put out there, Grant's averaging 99 with 101 fastball, I was just stoked and immediately hit our Blackout page, putting the receipts that we did with Elijah back almost a year ago. But seeing, like you said, Slavko Colson go straight away, that's just going to boost his confidence. And I was really skeptical of him coming into this spring, not knowing if he was going to earn it or not. But he's leading off the score, because it's 0-0. He hits that against the Cubs. Granted, I want to see him start, taking the ball opposite field a little bit more, and I want to see what he has defensively at short to see if he truly will earn it. But that's huge. If he can make the opening roster at shortstop, that's just another notch for Getz in the front office there, and with Venable as well. Other than that, I mean, yeah, we saw a little bit of our Schultz and Hagen Smith. They're starting on Thursday, I believe it is, the 26th. But we're about to see those two go at it, and if things go well, it's looking like they're going to be lining up with, Hagen starting off at A and Schultz at AA to start this spring. So things are looking up on the up. I know it's pretty bleak when we're going starting 0-2, but at least what you want to see is the youth, the core coming up and getting their reps against, for the first time for pro baseball.
I think fail and fail fast. Okay. The fact that Noah will go to AA, you can go from AA to the big leagues. It's not something completely out of this world for a pitcher. So that's promising for him. His issue has never been talent, has been more health. So if healthy, I think that his rise to the big leagues, he'll be in the big leagues. But the thing with Colson that's very positive for White Sox fans is you got a guy that in 2024 did not produce at the AAA level the way that people think that a prospect of that caliber should produce. Okay, he struggled, which is great because you're going to struggle in the big leagues as well. So having some struggle, it's going to happen in the game of baseball. That being said, he's working now with a hitting coach, new staff, new team, new manager. Okay. So again, all that stuff can come into the mix. He's 23 years old, so he's not 14. Okay. So he's at the age already, prime time for the big leagues. I don't think that Colson's going to come up and be rookie of the year. Hopefully he surprises us. But I would love to see if he does have a good spring training, that he is given a shot at the position to develop and have a 11 to 20 home run season, 15 home run season, hit his 230 and learn how to compete at the big league level, because it's about development. So the prospects that came through in the prior rebuild, they all destroyed AAA baseball. Destroyed it. Go look at the numbers. They made baseball look like it was a joke. Okay.
Moncada especially was
Moncada,
crazy.
Moncada especially made AAA baseball look like it was a joke. Okay, came to the big league, showed flares, struggled, wasn't able to develop to what the superstar that everyone thought that he would be and that he got paid for. A guy like Colson, his numbers in the minor leagues are not going to dictate his production at the big league level. They're not, because you can hit 375 in the minor leagues and then come to the big leagues and hit 270, but become a better defensive player. Okay. So I like that Colson is developing, because it's like, okay, you're seeing development, and I would like to see players come up and fail in the big leagues and then send them back. This thing about having prospects in a bubble, and I can't bring him up because you start service time, and if I send him down, I'm going to hurt his feelings. That's part of the game. That's part of the game for him to get that feel. And if he does play well and he can come up this year and contribute to the development of the team, that is key. Why? Because that's what makes a team better. When this team won the World Series the last time, okay,
20 years ago, by the way.
20 years ago, Jerry Manuel does not get more credit than he deserves, okay? Because Ozzie Guillen did not take over a bunch of kids that had never played baseball. He had guys that had developed but needed to figure out a way how to take it to the next level. They all had 5 years in the big leagues. Mark, John, Joe, okay? They had years under their belt in the big leagues, and they had struggled. They had gone their ups and downs. And when you look at the rebuild, again, everyone looks at the negatives, but when you see the Lopez stories, okay, guys that kind of figured it out towards the end of their time with the White Sox, Michael Kopech's, like, it takes time to have these guys succeed in the big leagues. So to have Colson come up and struggle, and you say, well, if he struggles and he comes up and down and, kind of figures it out, but in the next 3-4 years, you're going to have an everyday big league baseball player, it's worth the struggle. And I like it if you're going to struggle with someone like Colson, because he's the future. I don't want to say, well, he's not going to be a superstar right now, so let's keep him in AAA and let's play a guy at short that's 37 years old just because we're going to try to get, figure it out. If Colson can compete, he can compete. This is what we were complaining about last year with Corey Lee and Maldonado, saying, hey, give Corey Lee the at-bats. If Maldonado's killing it, by all means, keep playing Maldonado. But if Maldonado's going to hit 200 and be horrible, might as well play.
He hit half of 200.
He hit half of. That's what I mean. So if you're going to struggle and you look at, again, analytics, and if you're going to look at the wins above replacement, if you're going to give me the same wins above replacement and you're going to give me the same wins above replacement, I'm always going to take the wins above replacement from the younger player because I'm developing that guy. And when you guys just mentioned Joey Gallo, I like that they're doing things with some veterans because you're saying, what if he figures it out? And I can trade him. He can help me win games. I like that. I like the fact that they walked away and said, we're not bringing back Gavin Sheets because we might have somebody in Elko or somebody within the org that can do the same thing that Gavin does because Gavin was going to cost us, a pretty penny. So it's seeing those team players and saying, okay, I can move from them and not being scared. We saw a lot of guys this year, especially that were in the minor leagues that got released, that were not protected in the Rule 5, which means that you're not scared. I think that one of the things in the previous regime was they were very scared of seeing their prospects fail. They were seeing their prospects. They were scared of putting their prospects out there. And I think this year, even with White Sox Fest, it was all the prospects. They had all the guys there. They had all the guys that were good and the guys that were not supposed to be good. Guys that got drafted not in the first 10 rounds. And that's awesome because you have to develop those guys. When is the White Sox going to develop a second baseman? An outfielder. It's been a while.
Any hitter, period.
And the problem has not been in drafts. Everyone worries about the draft pick and who did we draft? And with the Latino kid signings and what kid did we sign? Everybody gets good talent. The question is, when you have that talent, can you develop it? And then can you develop it in the big leagues? Tim Anderson, Joan Moncada, great talent, great players. They're still those players. They just never developed them more. They didn't develop them more. They were still the same players that they were in AAA. If you grab any of those guys and you put them in a AAA roster, they're going to destroy it. They are because they're just past that level. Lenin Sosa right now, for example. Lenin Sosa can kill AAA. He needs to figure out if he's going to be an everyday big league player or a utility player. So giving those guys that opportunity to do that, Andrew Vaughn, the starting pitchers, you're going to have guys struggle because it takes time. Go look up Justin Verlander's first year big league numbers. The velo was there, but
you remember the White Sox used to shell him.
We used to shell him
years because all he did was pump straight fastballs.
That was a win, and the guy was nasty. 3 years later, they were like, "Oh my God, this guy figured it out." And guys say that when guys see players and go, "Wow!" Like when you see Noah Schultz, and I've watched him. Well, I haven't watched him live with Ozzy, but the videos, and you go, "Wow, okay, this kid." Damn, you see people that know the game of baseball and you say, wow, this kid looks pretty good. He's competing. He's figuring it out. He's finding a way. That's what you want because that's the development because once they get to the big leagues, 4 years ago, this kid was throwing high school games. So it's going to take time for you to figure it out at the big league level. Even if you're coming from college, from high school, every level is going to get harder and being able to compete. And that's where the manager, who I don't think he's going to win 100 games this year, but I think he's a huge improvement on where they were at because how the other guy was sold, that's who Will is. Nobody had to introduce me to Will from a baseball standpoint. You say, well, that's Will Venable, the bench coach. Guys that are coming over with credentials. And when I mean credentials, not credentials made by marketing. This guy was Salvador Perez's daddy. This guy was this. It's, you just know. And being at Sox Fest, talking to players, being around people saying they were just as excited that something new's coming. They don't know if it's going to be a World Series, but they just wanted something fresh. Okay? I think if last year's team, if they give Grady Sizemore that team in May, I don't think they lose 120 games just on pure like grit. And I think so many things were happening internally where everyone's focused on, is Chris Getz the right guy? Chris Getz doesn't have to be the right guy. Chris Getz has to put the people in place. And what I like is that there's, in that situation, for example, that there is no two people in command. Chris doesn't have a boss, and we're here debating and saying, "Oh, is that a this guy, or is that this guy's guy?" Because that happens. Even we just had to deal with it in winter ball. You know, it's very hard. The game went through a restructure where now you have presidents of baseball operations, and some teams can't figure it out because you have two bosses. The White Sox couldn't figure it out. They couldn't. Some teams, it works out perfectly. So for Chris to be there, why does it matter if Chris is not the smartest guy in the room from a baseball standpoint? But he surrounded himself with great baseball minds. I know that. So that's the part where, like, you don't have to do things the way that were done before in order to be successful. So the White Sox are trying something new, and it seems fresh and it seems more positive. And when you're talking to guys and you're hearing what they're saying, you're like, okay, this makes sense. There's something to this. Are they going to go out and win 100 games? No. But do I think that they're going to be a better baseball team? Absolutely. And do I think that they're going to be developed into better baseball players? I think that the manager has a better eye for talent. And I think things won't fly, you know, from a standpoint like they did before. And the roster changed. So you don't have to sit here and talk about, we're paying this guy this much money and he failed. So I think it's a refreshing point for the White Sox of, okay, the divorce is final. The Band-Aid was ripped. Let me restart in my new journey. I don't want to be the Cubs. The Cubs are in the middle of a marriage where they need to go and figure out if we're going to go spend $150 million more in order to compete. Oh my God, look at the Dodgers spending. Again, in today's baseball game, it's easier to have a team come back and be a playoff contender, which is what you want at the end. A team that can make a run for the playoffs. Look at the Arizona Diamondbacks, guys. They were in the World Series 2 years ago. The Texas Rangers failed to make the playoffs, didn't go deep. It happens. The White Sox need to put themselves in place where in the next couple years you're competing for the talent, especially in the division, which again, for their credit, you know, I don't know if it's good or bad, they're not in a division where you have a Dodgers. Okay? You're the Toronto Blue Jays, you're like, I hate my life. The Baltimore Orioles, because there's always somebody spending. And there's divisions like that. Like the Padres have spent a lot of money the last 5 years. They've signed everybody, you know, and they can't get, and now they have the Dodgers. They might have an amazing team for the next. So it happens. Okay. The White Sox have a chance to put a good team on the field, move on. And when I look at the lineup and I look at the team, I say, you know what? This is not a team that's going to lose 120 games. It's not. I'm the over's only 50. I don't know from how much longer, from a betting standpoint. And again, it gives you a chance of it's a balanced team when it says, okay, I got some veterans that might be, you know, high potential, low risk, release them. And if they work out, they work out. And then there's a lot of young talent that you say, okay, come out and play. Corey Lee, love the guy. It's your job to lose at this point. So a lot of times we're giving them the job, and hopefully if it doesn't pan out, they say, hey man, go home. Thank you for your time. And we saw that this offseason. So I think that this team is not the team that, from that type of structure and standpoint of thinking about, even though people want to keep going to the past, I think that we're looking at a different White Sox when it comes to that.
It does feel like the maybe the biggest positive is just how young this team is. It's not going to be like the 2000 team, you know, like the kids can play. There was some kids who were just higher and more MLB ready than what they have now, but there's opportunities at every single position. If you're Brooks Baldwin, if you're Lenine Sosa, if you're Brian Ramos, if you are anyone in uniform in spring training, you have an opportunity. I really don't think there's anyone who's penciled in pretty much anywhere unless they
Benintendi would be my only guess.
I just want to say this too. Go ahead, Slavko. I'll let you.
I'm just saying, even Benintendi, like, you know, Will Venable is basically saying, like, yeah, we'll find a way to get him in the middle of the lineup every day, but like,
Yeah.
If all of a sudden 3 guys are playing better, like, okay, well, you know what? Hey, Beni, you're going to hit 7th today and you're DHing. Sorry.
He shouldn't be in the middle.
Playing.
Here's the thing. He shouldn't be in the middle. And this is where Will, I think, is going to help as a manager. Because on a winning team, Benintendi is not in the middle of the damn lineup.
Of course.
I just want to say this. Everybody on this panel knows that I did not agree with the Will Venable signing. I did not want him as the manager of the White Sox. In the same breath, I can tell you for a fact, Will Venable was not a player to waste opportunity. So I want that to trickle, at least that trait to trickle down through the White Sox, because if we're going to have ample opportunity for the next 6 months, I want as many people as possible to take advantage of that. I hope that could be a message that could be sent to a very young roster, a very hopefully hungry roster.
I like the
It was already sent though.
When you saw Ozzy and Kenny together, even though they were both nutty, you're like, they're friends. Like, there's a match there. You could see them working together. Looking at Chris and Will, you can tell that that's his guy. Like that there's synergy there. So it wasn't it's not a signing where you're like, ooh, that doesn't match. And
you don't have to have the same person. You don't have to be the same person. As long as you have the same goals in mind.
Same goals.
And the process is the same. Gonzo, what were you going to say? You said the message has already been sent.
Yeah, because they DFA'd Steven Wilson, part of that Cease trade, the pitcher that we got from the Padres, who still had $3 million. Like, I thought they were going to put him in the bullpen right off the bat, and they cut him before they even broke camp. So to me, that's straight up like, hey, we got, at least on the pitching side of it, it's like, hey, we got a bunch of arms. Like, go earn a spot.
Yeah, and by the way, the person who has pressure right now, the pitching coach, like, you got a
lot of talent.
You got a lot of talent. Like, okay, let's see you work your magic. The hitting side, the guy, God, I always keep forgetting his name. I had a great conversation with him, and it's my bad. The bench coach, he came over from Milwaukee.
McKibben,
young kid. Okay, when you see a guy coming from the Milwaukee Brewers, you think, nerdy, analytics, doesn't know anything about the game, sees a game different. Not that guy. Baseball guy who knows the numbers.
He can do both.
Who can do both. Who's hungry, who you can tell is a hard worker for a very key position in our organization. He is a defensive run specialist, meaning how can we get teams to not score as many runs on us? That's pitching, that's defense, that's being able to get the most out of our talent. We had guys that were extremely talented from a standpoint of athleticism in the previous regime. Yet we were one of the worst teams defensively, and we cannot really for our lives catch a ball. That will improve, okay? Because I think the White Sox are going to be a team that if you don't catch the ball, you probably won't be playing. Just because of who the bench coach is, who I think Will is going to be as a manager. From what I've heard, from where he has worked, I think that defense is going to be something that moving forward is going to be something that is going to be essential in the White Sox. And that's extremely important. You got to catch the ball. So I think that little things like that make your pitching staff better, make the org better. And now you're saying, okay, they went outside and they're looking at ways to improve the team, not just with names, because you could have brought in all the best players in the league to the team. But if you don't have that structure and that way of playing, you're not going to succeed. And that's where I think it's important that you make this base awesome. And this is why I kept arguing with White Sox fans. Even when the White Sox were good, they were winning games. And I'm like, it's not a good team. They're just more talented than the guys they're playing against. You know, if you go look at the numbers, on the years the White Sox were good, on the Ricky, when they were in the development, they still did not drive the guy in from third. They did not move the guy over. They did not throw strikes. They were just super talented. But at the time when it got time to say, okay, we need to, and the competition got real, they were not ready to play at that level of, oh my God, they were playing street ball and basketball. And then somebody said, okay, now we're going to start calling plays. And they had no idea what the hell they were doing.
Well, you remember 2020, 60-game season, they, for 50 games, dominated in a smaller group of opponents, and then they choked. Then they bought in on that 60 games. 2021, we knew all season long. Think of Jake Lamb and Brian Goodwin and all the big hits and the big production that they were getting from places you were not expecting that got them those wins. They finished with 90 whatever wins. They won the division. They were like 30 and 50 against teams over 500. We knew, and they got fucking dominated as soon as they saw the Astros in the playoffs.
Jermaine Mercedes was a superstar, probably the best baseball player I've ever seen in a 1 month span. So like when you're looking at the production like that and people, blame Tony, I think that team overproduced. Now looking at how this whole thing ended, that team overperformed.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So because again, there's
Pedro made Tony, like 85-year-old Tony, look like a genius, like an incredible, active, smart baseball coach. Because he got more out of guys.
Correct. He got more out of guys. And the moment that you could say Pedro's bad, the moment that he was given a team, and he was not good as a manager, but the moment he was giving a team that was supposed to compete, that's why we saw it was so bad, because the team wasn't ready. Okay. And the manager wasn't good. That was one of the biggest. So when we did the pros and cons of Ozzie getting the job, okay, and obviously Ozzie being a White Sox guy, being very close to a lot of guys on that team, believed in the talent that these players had. But in the back of our heads, the only person, by the way, that said that this team was not good from the very start was Ivis Guillen, my mom. She never thought this team was good. Okay, but one of the big negatives was, is this team as good as they say it is? Even with Ozzie as a manager, and even if Ozzie was a manager, he wouldn't have made this team. It wouldn't have been a 120 loss team, but I don't think it would have been a playoff team. Like he's good, but damn, like I think that the talent on the field got exposed because it was never really ready and there, and it needed a season to do it that way. And I think that for the luck of those fans, it got so bad that everything got stripped, because the worst thing you could have had was that they were like decent, and then you were chasing for the next 8 years and it never got better. And you were that 5 game under 500 team, and you're like, wow, we're so close to it. Now it got so bad that you're like, strip it, and let's move forward with another plan. And I think that the fail fast is going to be a lot quicker. And we're not going to see guys get signed and, he had one good year and signed. We wanted to sign guys that had one good year pitching and had less than 100 innings thrown. They wanted to give guys like that a 5-year extension. Sign him forever. He's the greatest pitcher of all time. I think patience is going to be key for White Sox fans, and seeing the little things that players do and the development of winning games is going to be key, because patience is going to be key. We can't have Colson come up, and if he has a good week, say extend him for 100 years. We also can't say if he's got a bad week, release him. This guy's garbage. Let him go.
But the problem is White Sox fans don't have that patience. One
No,
way or
they
the
don't.
other. Because to your point, when Yermin Mercedes was tearing it up, they were like, how stupid are we? Why didn't we give this guy a chance before? And then he starts scuffling, and then it's a mess. Like, there's no winning with this fan base right now. Because if Montgomery comes up and hits 30 home runs in his first 2 major league weeks, like you said, oh my God, this is the future. 22 years old, got to sign him. And then what happens? Like,
Carlos, I call it the Carlos Quinton effect. What would this fan base think of Carlos Quinton, the last guy who had an MVP type like season in a White Sox uniform?
If
you know
he
what I
didn't
mean?
break his hand, he would have won MVP.
He would have won the MVP. Like that's the best season offensively anybody's had. You could say Chris Sale was a Cy Young candidate, but it was 1 year. Had he played in the last 5 years, people would have been like, extend him for the next 500 years. Moncada had 1 good year. TA had 1 good year. When I talk about good, I mean like good. When you look at the body of a makeup of a player, Major League Baseball is really hard. When guys do it 5, 6, 7 years in a row, then you're like, wow, this guy's an everyday player. But guys that do 1 year, 2 years, Daniel Palka almost hit 30 home runs. Did he hit 30 home runs?
The risk is if you lock them up early that you save on some of those free agent years, or you save long term, because if you let them do that for 5 years, now they've priced themselves out.
But that's the game.
Everybody thought Rick was a genius when he signed all those contracts, and it didn't work
did.
out. Well, you know what? Look at what Anthopoulos is doing with the Braves. Those are all freaking genius contracts.
Yeah, but just because one guy does it well doesn't mean there's 2 geniuses in Chicago. Rick, and what's the Bears guy's name that you guys said that he was going to win playoffs? And he's going to win. Not a genius, not a genius anymore. And I have not said anything. I have not tweeted anything.
Jury's still
perfect example.
What
this guy's a
the
genius.
fuck?
This guy's this guy's that. Same thing with Rick. Again, with Chris Getz, I'm not going to say he's a genius. I'm not, because I don't think when I talk to Chris Getz, I don't think he's a genius. He's a normal guy. He knows the game of baseball. Do I think he's as bad as people think that he is? No. Do I think he's as great as people think he is? No. But I don't think I'm not going to go out and say Chris is a genius when he's only had the time that he's had and he's coming off a 120-game losing season. So you can't. I think that the patience is there. We were giving Rick Hahn said that he had the next Ozzie Guillen, or the guy had never managed Major League Baseball. Okay, you can't make comments like that. They said that Moncada and TA were the next Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. The guys brought 6 championships to the city of Chicago.
I think I was the only person to say that, OJ.
But no. That was in a public. You can that was in a newspaper. Okay, comments like that are dangerous. Okay, you got to be patient and got to have the body of work. I'll give you Mark Burley. When you see Mark Burley in the beginning of his career throwing, and you look at the end, at no point, we were at White Sox Fest, and obviously we were talking about the Hall of Fame. And Mark is very humble. Mark doesn't think he's a Hall of Fame. He might know, but we don't.
He wants to do what I want to do. He wants to go hunt and drink beers.
Oh, hunting, drinking, and fishing every day. That's and be with his family. But I'm saying, when Mark was playing, you never thought he's a Hall of Famer. You really didn't think that. Not like Jimmy and Frank. Those guys are a different level. But guys like him, guys like PK, you didn't think Hall of Fame. But those guys put in the work every single day for so long that when their careers are over, you're like, damn, that guy, I was watching greatness in front of me. You don't have to have Ohtani on your team to have success. So I want to see a team that has good players on a consistent basis and put something together and say, wow, that was a really good team. The White Sox are we're so thirsty for a superstar. What's the point of having one big super? People were like, oh, Jerry's out on Ohtani. What was the point of have Ohtani in this roster? It'd be the Angels. The Angels had Ohtani and Trout. So you need to build a team, and it's so hard in baseball because in basketball you get 2 guys, you might make a run for it. You need that superstar. In baseball, you sometimes rather have 3 really good players than have one giant superstar. Okay. And I think since Chris Sale, and again, Cease was good. I'm losing my train of thought on that. What's a pitcher? The lefty.
Schultz?
No.
Crochet.
Crochet. Gonzo goes from lefty to lefty. Now it's Schultz. Schultz is going to be the next phenom. But when you saw Chris Sale, wow, that's different. He's, Cy Young caliber. But then every pitcher that's come up after Sale is the next Chris Sale. And it's he's not Chris Sale.
But the Sale comparisons too, he's tall, he's skinny, and he's got a wipeout slider from that arm.
But that's what I mean. But you can't do that. You can't and again, I'm not saying that no one doesn't have that talent, but Crochet, Cease, everybody that's come up that's the best pitcher in the staff, Kopech, they think Chris Sale. It's no, wait a minute. That's a different. Chris Sale's in a small group of guys that are less than 5% of the league. So every prospect that's going to come up is not going to be in that top 5%. And your team doesn't have to be in the top 5%. So when we're talking prospects and everyone thinks that every single guy is going to hit and be a next Ohtani, that's not realistic. So I think that's why I say patience, because everyone just gets so thirsty. And I don't know if it's just as White Sox fans or the way that the sports are played now, because we have so much access to the players and the information, and we get constant highlights, and we kind of live on a week by week basis. I think that's important, and I think that's why Will's important, because he seems like an even keel guy. Never too happy, never too sad. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to he knows his spot. The one thing I liked about him in the White Sox Fest, he wasn't going around saying, I'm the manager. Look at me, telling everybody I'm the boss. He was just himself. He knows he's the boss. And that's so important, because before you had guys that were needed to sell themselves on their greatness. And I think that's important for players, because I think he'll keep it humble when guys get too high or when guys get too low. I think that's part of the development at the big league level, where it becomes a reality of not everyone's a superstar. You asked in the previous regime about any player on any given day. If this would have been sock spring training the last 2 years, Colson Montgomery, next MVP. Next MVP. One home run against the one home run. Elko against the Cubs. Next Frank Thomas.
Hey,
So that's the thing. Like, everything has to be cohesive going forward. And I think the best part out of everything was even White Sox marketing seemed to change, because they didn't go all out and make a crazy slogan like, we're going to go all in, we're going to be great. We're going to do, like, it's been different. They're not selling anybody like they're the next savior of the team. Even they've kind of stepped back on the way they sell the team, because the way they sold before, man, you talk about Tim Anderson. You walk this, if the world was to end today and they would talk about Tim Anderson, you would think that you got a top 3 MVP player that used to play on the White Sox. And that's no knock on Tim. Great guy, solid player. His time was good, but he wasn't how he was sold. And that's why the letdown was so big on him, on Moncada, on Eloy, because we were selling them so high. I always go back to the Joe Creedy. Do you like Joe Creedy? Everybody's like, of course, I love Joe Creedy. Do you like Joe Creedy hitting third every day? You're like, whoa,
Big
okay,
difference.
It's a little different. So that's where I think that this year, the development, we have to see, and I want to see that growth from the players. So I think Colson's a great example that's exciting, even though they lost the 2 games, because you're like, man, you're seeing a guy that struggled in AAA last year, did not really play in spring training as a starter last year, didn't do winter ball, which I thought was a mistake, but obviously he's proven me wrong. He can come in and maybe be in the big league team. That's a win. That's in the development conversation. When they're in spring training and they're talking about development of players, you're like, okay, that's a positive. So looking at the positives of now we're projecting Noah to be in AA. That's a positive. So looking at the projections of players, of saying, okay, we're seeing the growth. We're seeing the player get better. We're seeing the improvement. Okay, that's something that this team needs. More production on the field and more actual development. More of that and less marketing, I think, is the key.
Baby steps. That's it. Jay, you got the final word.
Well, I want to congratulate you people, because Chris Getz have blessed you with Joey Gallo, Brandon Drury, Josh Rojas, James Karachek, and now Mike Clevenger. There's no reason why this White Sox team should fail. We are winning above. You say 60 Slav, that's our cap. I'm going to say 62. I'm going to say
Still a 100 loss season.
Exactly 100 losses, right?
Yeah.
But we
That's
don't.
but by the way, guys,
it could go in
lost,
either direction.
They've never lost 3 years in a row, 100 games. Not a lot of teams have done it.
I won't be alive to see.
If they go 63-99, that's a huge improvement, guys.
It'd be a minor miracle.
Correct. So
Chris
that number,
hold
on, that number should be in Will's head. That number should be in every player's head. That's their playoff. I once asked Ozzie Sr., because he played some really bad teams. By the way, never lost 100 games as a White Sox, as a player or manager, on really bad teams, which was shocking.
That
even
07
in
team
Tampa
was bad.
Yeah, they were bad. But I asked him, I said, how do you stay pumped up other than your contract when you're playing for such a bad team? Like, you're in spring training, you're like, damn, you went with Tampa, you go to spring training, you went to spring training with the Braves. There was no plans being made in October. They knew that they're a playoff run. Like, no vacations were not set. But you're teams that you're in a rebuild. You're making plans in October. You can go to Cabo, make that golf trip, that hunting trip, get that last bit of
he's talking to you, season. Slav.
No, I'm just saying though, guys make plans. But I'm saying, like, how do you stay
motivated?
But
we know what Senior did when he was with Tampa.
Yeah, obviously. But
that
I'm
was
saying,
a season-long vacation.
Yeah, it was a season-long vacation. But I'm saying, like, how do you get ready, like, to go and show up every day? Again, he was with the Tampa. He was a veteran, but with the White Sox in the 80s, he was in his prime. Like, he was in his prime. He was the best player on the team. Like, how do you stay motivated, and how do you guys stay like on that, and he was like, you make small goals. Like you take this approach of, we're not going to lose 3 games against this team. We're going to win this series. We're going to win.
What separates a guy like Ozzy from like a player like Luis Robert, who, let's be honest, he checked out in May last season.
Correct. But that was Slav. I asked him that, and he said the guys around him and his manager set that tone of, you show up on a Sunday. Last year, the White Sox should have won 15 games just on the third game of a road trip. I'm like, we're going to beat these guys. There's no way these guys are going to come out here today and beat us because we've lost 8 games in a row. So that, I think that's when a manager, the staff, the front office, that mentality of going in there and saying, hey, we need to have goals of small goals. Small goals of saying, we're not going to lose 100 games. We're not losing 100 games on the 125th year anniversary of the Chicago White Sox as a franchise on the 20th years of the 2005 World Series. That's our playoff. Okay, our playoff is going to be for the players. We're going to have everybody, unless you have a crazy injury. We're going to be the team that's on the field. No, I'm saying, dude, I'm just saying, imagine if the White Sox say we're going to be the team that averages the most games played by our starting lineup in Major League Baseball. You know how big of a win that would be?
Let's go.
You know, imagine if these guys played 140 games. Like how much of a win in the development that would be. I think that's something that
means, but so here's the thing about this year's roster with 140 games specifically, even if it's 120 games, that means that they're forcing their way into the lineup.
Correct.
If you have 5 guys play 140 games this year and they're under the age of 30, that is a huge,
but that's a win
development for this.
That's a huge
future of this franchise.
That's what I'm saying though. That's what you need. That's what you need to look as a win. Not look at the win and loss columns. Not look at, they're 0-2 is like, wow, we got 4 guys that played 140 plus. Those guys are in the 20.
Imagine if Chase Madrill gives you 450 at bats because he forced his way in the lineup.
By the way, Jay, and also all those guys that you just mentioned, go to every other big league roster, including the Dodgers. They all have players like that.
Yep.
Every team has a player that every fan base is pissed that they're on their team. Okay. There's a veteran guy that you're like, why is this guy on our team? I'm sure Tampa Bay was saying, why is Ozzie Guillen in our freaking spring training camp? Okay. Why is so-and-so? Every team goes through that. So those are things like, if we were looking at 9 starters that were in that group, like Joey Gallo's giving, he's playing 150 games and that's the lineup, that's concerning. Those are long shots. Those are things that, dude, when you're in camp, those guys are like, hey, let's give them as many opportunities as they can. If they make the team, they make it. If not, thank you very much. We're going to let you go. If they're doing well, they'll take them and then maybe trade bait, maybe movement. But those guys I'm not concerned about at all.
It's a minor league contract at the end of the day between Gallo, Clevenger, so on and so on.
Yeah, I think they used the Clevenger they said just sign him. Just sign him to get the fans even more mad. But
now they're saying, or Merck's saying that they're going to try him at a closer.
Why not though?
What do you have to lose?
And
let's be honest. If you're Mike Clevenger and they come and say, hey, we're going to give you a shot, but it's not going to be as a starter, he's got to do everything that he can right now to prolong his career, to prove to somebody out there that he's still a big league pitcher. So, I mean, I see it from both sides. Why not? Try something else. Especially
you remember, I was going to say Wade Davis, Luke Hochevar.
There's countless. John Smoltz ended up becoming
a
closer.
And again, though, it's you're thinking you wanted the team to think outside the box. You've been crying and craving, and this team doesn't do all. You're taking, even if you look at it analytically, if he's healthy, you're like, okay. There's one thing I like about this roster that no one's talking about. They have a guy like Martin Perez that if he stays healthy, he's going to eat innings. Last year's team, one of the biggest concerns I had, because Ozzie brought it up, was that the pitcher that was kind of the anchor of the staff had never thrown more than 100 innings. That's not a good sign because baseball is 9 innings. And when you have a young staff and you have a young bullpen, there's going to be injuries. Who's going to eat these innings? So I think that when you're looking at the guys that are competing, there's a lot of guys that are young that can compete for those innings. Like Slav said, A lot of those guys are just going to find their way into the lineup, into the rotation, like trying to consume innings. You have the bodies, but then you need those veteran guys that are going to go out there and give you those starts and consume those innings. I think that's going to help out the bullpen and help out that whole situation. So if you get an arm like Mike Clevenger to be able to expose him as a closer and let these younger arms not be in that position, so be it. Why do you need an elite closer right now in your young, talented pool of guys on a team that you know is not going anywhere? But if Mike Clevenger comes and makes the team and has 25 games in the middle of the year, saves, and is representing the White Sox in the All-Star game, they're going to trade him. So the risk and reward. I always just look at the players and what they have. I think that's what they're doing with Joey Gallo. I think that's what you just have to do. So I like the fact that they thought, why not? What the hell?
All right, last thing before we get out of here tonight, we want to send some well wishes to someone that we all loved for a long time here in Chicago, Bobby Jenks. He's out in Portugal receiving treatment. He has stage 4 stomach cancer, which is obviously very serious and something that we're hoping and praying that he gets some recovery from. The White Sox shared this about a week ago, kind of came out of left field for, I think, a lot of people. A guy that a lot of people really, really, really loved. So, love still presently. So we're pulling and hoping for Bobby, and hopefully there's some good news for him.
It sucks, man, because when the Boston Red Sox celebrated their anniversary, they had lost Tim, and we were talking prior to Bobby's announcement. There wasn't any rumors because we found out, meaning my family, we found out probably about 2 weeks, probably 2 weeks to a week, the bad news that that Bobby was getting checked, that he had done some medical stuff and it wasn't positive, because we'd always talked that why do they wait 5-10 years to kind of reunite? Because I don't know, because if they won the World Series, because the team was just super close. A lot of guys stay in touch text wise, and we know not everybody's like best friends, but everybody knows how everybody else is doing. If you want to talk to PK, you talk to somebody. Everybody has contact with somebody. So we're very lucky. I kept saying we're very lucky. We haven't lost anybody, and everybody's healthy. So everybody got that news. It sucks because everybody's been pumped, for the reunion. Everybody's been real excited to see one another, and that kind of bad news always brings people back together. And obviously everybody was texting and everybody was sending, the best wishes and whatnot. And it sucks, man. Bobby was somebody that I kept saying that the White Sox should bring into the organization. He had started his career as a coach, had been very successful. Bobby's a person that a lot of energy, a dude that, even in his worst moments, everybody loves Bobby.
He's a likable guy.
He's a likable dude. From the moment he stepped in with the Chicago White Sox, a dude that came into camp with what people called red flags, a long shot, a dude that everybody liked. We don't have a ring, we don't have a trophy without Bobby. A guy that had a great career, but like Slav just said, man, just a likable dude, especially in that team because he was the baby. I think other than him and BA, talking about likable dudes, Brandon McCarthy, not so likable. meaning again, people are just different. Bobby is probably the most intimidating guy with a uniform on, that when you talk to him, you're like, oh, not as scary as he looks. You look at Bobby, when Bobby came up I remember the first time we saw Bobby in camp. It was first day of camp, and you got Mark Burley and Freddie Garcia throwing next to him, and they're throwing like 80. They're like balls are flying, and you see Bobby like, and Ozzy and they were like, hey, like, they won, like, you're not gonna make the big league team. And they're like, no, that's just how I throw. And everybody was like, oh boy, like, you saw the talent, but he was just a likable dude from the get-go. So youngest guy probably on the roster, probably from a standpoint of being there, given a position where we got to remember, when Bobby came in, he was our third closer at that moment. Okay. big responsibility to be able to Ozzy to say you're the man, and Cooper and the players say, you know, we're winning wire to wire, and now we're giving this ball to this kid who is in Double A. Okay, so I think that story, you know, the Sox win and the career that he had with the White Sox, and you look up the numbers. You know, Bobby was probably one of the best closers in the game, if not the best one. Obviously, Mariano was in the game at that moment. He was just dominant. So I think that from a likability standpoint, I think it's just hard because I think a lot of people, other than him being obviously a fan favorite, but the players, man, it just sucks. And I think that it puts reality in perspective of it was 20 years ago. We're getting older. You know, life sucks. Life is like that, meaning health and family. So it's going to be a special reunion, obviously, because it's 20 years, but it's going to be great. Hopefully Bobby is there. You know, his treatment goes well and he's able to make the trip in July when they do the reunion. But prayers, man, he's got to pray and say, you know, Ozzy sent him a message talking about statistics, you know, because obviously everybody looks up stage 4 and they look up the Google, and everybody's playing MedDocs and WebMD and looking at stats. And Ozzy Seniors told them when said, don't, you know, everyone's always been counting against you. You've beat the odds before. You know, you were never supposed to be the big leagues, and you were never supposed to, you know, be alive right now. You know, if you looked at Bobby's story, the surgery in the arm, and you know the fiasco that was, and they freaking mangled the guy, and he's been a guy that he's beat the odds always in his life, and this is just another challenge for him. And hopefully, you know, God willingly, he's on the other side and beats the odds, and you know, is one of those guys in that small percentage, because you know that it just sucks to see a guy. He's old for baseball standpoint. You know, you're old for baseball, but in life, he's a young guy. Bobby's young. You know, Bobby's a young dude. So wishing for the best for him, and I think it was really cool to see White Sox fans for one time, and I was so happy that no idiot went on Twitter or something and said something negative about Bobby. Okay, people are not perfect. People make mistakes. People bounce back from mistakes. It was a really cool moment to see all the White Sox fans come together and be there for Bobby. And just because there's always negativity. If something happens with this team, there's always something positive, but you get some people that just write dumb stuff all the time. And I didn't see any of that. I hope there's none of that, because obviously this is beyond the game. This is beyond and just wish them the best. You know, we had great news when their last closer, you know, got sick. Hopefully with this one, we end up on the other side as well.
Go read the Scott Merkin piece that he wrote up on Bobby. He's getting treated in Portugal, but you know, I mean, he's trying to stay positive and doing everything he can. And the great quote that he's got in the article. I'll tell you one thing: I'm not going to die here in Portugal. So, like you said, prayers out to Bobby Jenks. Hopefully he's there, God willing, with you guys in July, Junior.
Indeed.
That's all we got for this episode. Jay, Gonzo, Ozzy, any final shout outs?
Nah, excited. I'm excited. I'm a lot more excited this year than I was last year. I'm just saying I was a lot more excited because I know this is going to be a big season on prospects. And, you know, Slav, you know how I feel about prospects. But I'm excited.
The big leagues, right? Yeah.
No, but I'm more excited about, again, I'm not trying to sell the White Sox. I'm not. If you want to watch them, watch them. If you don't, good for you. You hate Jerry, that's your opinion.
You can find a way to watch them.
If you find a way, if you find a way to watch, that's a whole other issue. But the positivity from the young players, who knows if those guys are even going to be in the roster, to be honest. The positivity of the new coaching staff, the players, the aura that was there after such a freaking disaster of a season. Okay. Because it was bad. It was bad. It was bad in many ways. I think it was. I don't think people realize how bad it was beyond the record, just from everyone, just the toxicity that was happening there, and the stories that you keep hearing and coming, you're like, oh my god, like stories just keep coming out, and you're like, oh, that happened, and this happened. That how positive Sox Fest was, okay, without a big free agent signing. you know, with knowing that you're going into the season.
Talked about all this last episode when you were shitting your pants.
No, correct. Well, but I'm just saying, like, I can say my point. I think that this season, even from the show standpoint, last season, even having a better roster, I'm being more positive just because of the people that are on the that are running the team. And I'm not trying to sell people saying Will Venable is going to be the savior of all this stuff, but he's a baseball guy. Like he is like, okay, let me put it this way. If Will Venable was not managing the Chicago White Sox, he would be managing somewhere else in the big league level. The former manager that was with the Chicago White Sox, if he wasn't managing the White Sox, he wouldn't be managing anywhere.
Yeah.
That's the way that I see it. And that's why I'm more positive on when you're looking at it in the future. And, you know, you always got to root for general managers you've gotten drunk with. Back in my drinking days, I've you know, it's like you're getting to the point where you're old enough where your peers are becoming general managers. So I'm obviously rooting for Chris. I want Chris to do well. Great. I know you guys, I was supposed to talk about this the last episode, and I'll talk about it throughout the season. Keller and the international signing group, the report that people in Venezuela were getting from him, he was on the ground, something that hadn't happened in a long time for the boss to be in the country. Made some impactful signings on guys that were not White Sox guys in Venezuela. Not sure how he did in other places, but you're seeing the change. You're seeing like, okay, like you're seeing things that are different. That's all positives for the organization and what comes in the future. So I've been getting all that. And for this season, I said, I think it's going to be more positivity coming out of the Blackout show. And it's not going to be, oh my God, you know, I'm going to get on here. Let me not be as mean because I don't want to be. And by the way, it is just like that for Ozzie Sr. You know, last year was hard for him just because negativity wise, you don't want to be negative all the time. So I think that everyone's looking, you know, even Southpaw seems to be in the upside on positivity. So looking forward to it, guys, for another season with you guys.
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
shout outs.
No shout outs. Shout outs to Bobby. Praying for him every day
Yes.
that he finds swift recovery. We all are. And by the way, everyone's pumped up about the July reunion. Oh, and Mark, I guess Mark gets a shout out. He gets a statue now.
What's the official date on that? I don't remember off the top of my head.
I don't think I don't know if there is one. I don't know. They said July 13th or 11th. I haven't marked in our calendars because obviously from a family standpoint. But it's going to be fun. That's a great group of guys. You know, it's exciting. Everyone's pumped up to be there. It's a magical year, but it's going to be fun to see everybody. And then Mark's getting a statue.
July 12th is the statue.
The statue. So the statue is an official date. So the statue is going to be like a mini reunion probably because a lot of the guys will probably come in for that. Again, Mark's probably one of the most loved players in the team, that team. So that'll be a mini reunion. Obviously, everyone's going to be roasting Mark, Lefty, as I call him. Everyone's going to be roasting Lefty on him being able to get a statue now. We were all joking around. What's the statue? What was he going to be doing and whatnot? So, but it's going to be fun, man. It's going to be cool. Well deserved. Again, we're talking about him potentially being a Hall of Famer. Like it's a real conversation now. But it's going to be fun, man. I think it's going to be a lot of positive things this season.
All right, boys. Good show. Make sure if you're watching that you're listening to the podcast and subscribing there. If you're listening to the podcast, make sure you're tuning in when we go live on YouTube. Make sure to follow the Guillen Grid on YouTube. And, of course, follow us on all the social media channels at The Blackout Show. For Ozzy, for Jay, for Gonzo, I'm Slavko. Thank you for watching. We'll see you guys next time.